Louisiana's Way Home, chapter 22 and 23. Now remember, at this point, Louisiana talked to Burke. She went to the motel to try to get her things, and she couldn't. She has to stay an extra day to sing for a funeral to pay for the motel room. Now, in the meantime, she's going to stay at Burke's house, and her and Burke are concocting a plan so that they can leave and have her go back home to Florida. But go home to what? Let's find out. Chapter 22. When we got back to the pink house in the woods, it smelled sweet again because Betty Allen was baking another one of her 17 cakes. This one was pineapple upside down. I have never in my life had a pineapple upside down cake, I said to Betty Allen. Well, we will have to rectify that, I'm sure. In the meantime, I would like it if Bert Allen explained to me why he wasn't in school today. I was helping Louisiana, said Burke. You can't keep skipping school, Burke, said Betty Allen. After a time, it will catch up with you, and you will find that life has closed its doors to you. You don't want life to close its doors to you, do you? No, ma'am, said Burke. He looked down at his feet. Open doors, said Betty Allen. That is what we want, doors that are open to us. She put her hand on Burke's head and left it there a minute, and then she turned to me. Sweetie, she said, is that the same dress you had on yesterday? It is, I said. My other dresses are in my luggage, and my luggage is currently unavailable to me. Well, why is your luggage currently unavailable to you? Many terrible and complicated things have happened, I said. Well, what are they? I stood in the sweet-smelling house and looked into Betty Allen's gentle face. She looked back at me. Oh, I wanted to tell her that I didn't even know who I was. I wanted to tell her that I had been left. I wanted to tell her that she reminded me of the blue fairy. What I said was, have you read the story of Pinocchio? Burke gave me a shove. He said, Louisiana's granny ain't feeling good. Can Louisiana stay here with us? Well, what's wrong with your granny? Said Betty Allen. She's having tooth problems, I said, and she needs some time to recuperate. She's extremely unwell. She's also a liar. Burke gave me another little shove. He said, can Louisiana stay or not? Oh, for heaven's sake, Burke, said Betty Allen. Of course Louisiana can stay. She kept her eyes on me. She gave me a very serious look and then smiled the most beautiful smile and reached out her hand and placed it on the top of my head, just the same as she had done with Burke. It felt so nice. Thank you, Mama, said Burke. Thank you, Mrs. Allen, I said. Well, why don't you two go and wash up, said Betty Allen. Supper's going to be ready soon. At the dinner table that night, I sat next to Grandfather Burke. He said, look at here, there she is, sitting right at the table as pretty as you please. You need a phone book to set on you so you can reach the table. Don't pick on her, Grandpap, said Burke. Pick on her? I ain't picking on her. I'm glad to see her is all. He winked at me. Daddy, said Burke's father, you let her alone now, just eat. The dinner was fried chicken and green beans and mashed potatoes, and I ate everything set before me. It was all very good, but truly I wasn't even certain that I was there. I kept imagining the dark alley of the Louisiana Five and Dime. I kept hearing Burke say, this curse ain't your curse. I kept seeing Betty Allen smile at me. There was vanilla ice cream with chocolate sauce for dessert. We each had our own little cut glass bowl. There were peanuts sprinkled on the top of the chocolate sauce. I ate all my ice cream. I scraped the bowl with my spoon, and then Grandfather Burke slid his bowl of ice cream over so that it was sitting right in front of me. I looked down at Grandfather Burke's bowl. The glass was twinkling in the light. It looked very pretty. It was dark outside, and there were lights on inside, and the bowl was catching all the light, and everybody was around the table, and the bowl was full of ice cream and chocolate sauce and peanuts. And I felt like I was right on the verge of understanding something. And then Grandfather Burke said, that's for you, Doodlebug. I stared down at the beautiful bowl, and I started to cry. Why are you crying? He said. I shook my head. Leave her alone, Grandpap, said Burke. I ain't done nothing to her except give her my dessert. I was crying too hard to pick up my spoon, and that is something that has never happened to me before. Well, what ails her, said the grandfather. She misses her granny, said Burke. I do not miss my granny, I said. Grandfather Burke took hold of my hands in a very gentle voice. He said, go on, eat it, darling. Take what's offered to you. Holding onto his horse hoof gave me some courage and comfort, and after a while I stopped crying and picked up my spoon. There you go, honey, said Betty Allen. I ate the whole bowl of ice cream without once letting go of Grandfather Burke's hand. That's the way to do it, he said. That's all right. The peanuts on top of the sundae were particularly good. The house smelled like pineapple upside down cake. Well, the whole world was upside down, but it was spinning. Wasn't it? Chapter 23. In the morning, Burke went to school. He said he would find the atlas and tear out the map of Florida and locate Lister and figure out exactly how to get there. And Betty Allen washed my dress for me, which was very nice and thoughtful of her. At 11:30 sharp, I walked into the Goodnight Sleep Tight and turned myself over to Bernice, who did not have her hair in curlers. You can imagine my surprise. I almost didn't recognize her. She was wearing a shiny black dress, and her hair wasn't very curly when you considered how much time it spent in curlers. Mostly Bernice looked annoyed. Well, I was annoyed too. I wanted my suitcase back. I wanted to go home, even though I felt somewhat sad about sundering myself from Betty Allen and Burke Allen, and also from the grandfather Burke Allen, who was very good about sharing his food with me. We drove to the Lonely Shepherd Church in Bernice's green Buick Skylark. Bernice did not speak to me, and I did not speak to her. Bernice and I were never going to be friends, and that was fine with me. Actually, I hope that I never had to see her again in my whole life. I hope that I never had to see Miss Lulu again either. You are going to sing twice, Miss Lulu said to me when we arrived at the church. She held up 2 fingers. At the beginning of the funeral and at the end, you are going to sing the same song both times. The song was Amazing Grace, and it is a song that I have sung 100,000 times before because it is what people always want sung at funerals, and I have sung at 100,000 funerals because it was a good way for the granny person to make some money. Here are the words in Miss Lulu if you would like to review them. She handed me a piece of sheet music. I did not take it from her. I know the words, I said. She sighed, and the sigh smelled like caramel. You would think that eating all that candy would rot her teeth. I hope it did. I wonder if this child takes her responsibilities here seriously, Miss Lulu said to Bernice. I assure you she does, said Bernice, and she gave me a deadly look. Well, let me tell you something, said Miss Lulu. I discovered her sneaking around Reverend Obertaft's office yesterday with his pipe in her hand. Can you imagine? She's capable of anything, said Bernice. Her grandmother has disappeared, vanished, left the child here on her own. As far as I can tell, she's staying with the Allens, and as well, you are well aware, that Burke Allen is nothing but a truant and a vandal, and he will certainly do nothing to further this child's moral education. The two of them went on talking like I wasn't even standing there. Miss Lulu's curls bounced with every word she said. Bernice's fake curls, however, did not move at all. The church was filling up with people. And then Reverend Obertast appeared and said to me, Louisiana Elefante, it is a delight to gaze upon your winsome face once again. Miss Lulu snorted. Reverend Obertast put a comforting hand on my shoulder. He said, let's get this show on the road. We will begin with the child singing, said Miss Lulu. Just as it should be, said Reverend Obertast. Just exactly as it should be. The light came in through the stained glass windows. Bernice went and sat down. And Miss Lulu started to play the organ, and I stood up there and sang. Miss Lulu's playing was terrible, of course. But it was just not possible for me to sing without putting my whole heart into it. You have a gift, Louisiana, and the more of yourself you put into that song, the more powerful, the more truthful the song becomes. That is what Granny said to me, as if that woman knew anything about the truth. What a liar she was. She was nothing but a liar. Maybe I wasn't found in an alley at all. Who could I say? And speaking of alleys, what kind of people put their baby on top of a pile of cardboard boxes in a dark alley? It was terrible. Just as Reverend Obertask had said, my parents were terrible. No real mother would ever leave her baby in an alley. Why, Betty Allen would never do such a thing to Burke Allen in a million trillion years. Oh, it made me so mad to think about it, all of it. But even though I was mad, I put myself into the song. I put every bit of myself into it. There was rustling out in the pews. It was a sound of people pulling tissues out of their pockets and their purses. They were all crying. And that was good. I wanted them to cry. I put even more of myself in the song, and then I saw something truly terrible. Sitting right there in the very front row was Mrs. Ivy from the dentist's office. Her lips were in a straight line, and she was pulling a piece of paper out of her purse. Oh my goodness, it was the bill for teeth removal. She was waving it in the air. And then I noticed that Dr. Fox was sitting right next to Mrs. Ivy. His little round glasses were winking in the light. He was wearing his dental coat. There's still a spot of blood on it. It seemed like a very inappropriate thing to wear to a funeral. The room tilted sideways, and then it righted itself again. My goodness, the church building was like a ship on stormy waters. I kept singing, and then I saw Granny. I couldn't believe it. She was sitting right behind Dr. Fox. She was wearing her fur coat, and she was smiling at me using all of her teeth. Was she back already from fighting the curse? How did she manage to recover her teeth? Was there no end to her powers? Way at the back of the church, somebody went floating by in a flying trapeze kind of outfit, which is not the kind of thing you wear to a funeral. But maybe the spankly outfit was just something I imagined because it was there, a flash of light, and then it was gone. When I looked away from the glittery light and back at Granny, she was still smiling at me. She was sitting up very tall, reminding me to stand up straight, to project my heart into the world. I shook my head. The sanctuary was tilting terribly again. Everything was sliding to one side, and I stopped singing. And then Miss Lulu stopped playing the organ, which was a relief. Everything was as silent could be. And that is when Clarence flew into Good Shepherd, his dark feathers shining like a light. Clarence had come looking for me. It was so quiet in the church that you could hear the flapping of wings. It sounded like the beating of a heart. Granny smiled at me. She said, "Provisions have been made, Louisiana." At least I think that's what she said. All I know for certain is that the church tipped again. And this time, I tipped with it.